Rain-slicked streets reflected the dim glow of street lamps, turning the city into a shimmering river of light. Lila Harper hugged her threadbare coat tighter around herself as she navigated the narrow alleyways, shivering despite the layers. The small pouch of coins she carried would barely last her the week, and her stomach grumbled as she tried to ignore it. She had grown used to hunger, to cold, to exhaustion. Life had a way of testing people, and Lila had learned to survive on scraps, odd jobs, and the kindness of strangers, rare as that kindness was. Yet even in her struggles, Lila couldn't turn away when she saw someone in need. It was a trait she didn't fully understand. Perhaps it was because she had known loneliness. Perhaps it was because small gestures, even in the darkest moments, could change a person's day or life. That evening, as she walked home from the diner where she worked cleaning tables, she saw an older man stumble near the corner. His expensive-looking coat was soaked from the rain, and he clutched a briefcase with a trembling hand. He muttered to himself, words drowned by the downpour, and it was clear he was struggling to stay upright. Lila's instinct kicked in. She approached slowly. "Sir, are you okay?" The man looked at her with startled eyes. He was clearly wealthy, with an air of authority even as he swayed in the rain. I'm fine," he said quickly, trying to regain composure. But Lila saw through it. Something was wrong. Not just the rain, but the way his hands shook, the way he glanced around as if afraid. "You're not fine," she said firmly. "Here, take my coat. You're freezing." He hesitated, glancing at her small patch jacket. "I couldn't, please," Lila urged. "I don't need it tonight." "You do." The man studied her face, the honest, determined expression of someone who had nothing but still cared for others. And finally, with a soft sigh, he accepted the coat. He draped it over his shoulders, shivering less. "Thank you," he said, voice lower now, almost humble. That was very kind of you." Lila smiled faintly, pulling her hood tighter. "I've been cold before. I know how it feels." He studied her for a long moment. "You're unusual." "Maybe," Lila replied, shrugging. "But it's better to help than to ignore." The man nodded slowly, his eyes distant. "You remind me of someone I used to know. He stopped abruptly, shaking his head. "No matter. Thank you again." Lila turned and walked away, the rain soaking her through. She didn't wait for gratitude or reward. She simply went home, thinking of warm bread and the soft bed she had managed to scrape together in the shelter above the diner. Later that night, after the streetlights had dimmed and the city settled into a quiet rhythm, Lila returned to her small apartment. She dropped the few coins she had earned on the table and sat by the window, watching the rain continue to fall. Her mind wandered back to the man. There had been something in his eyes, a sadness, a weight, that tugged at her heart. Little did she know, her simple act of kindness that evening had set in motion events that would turn her life upside down. The next day, she awoke to a loud knock on her door. Hesitant, she approached, peeking through the peephole. Standing there was the man from last night, dry now, neatly dressed, and holding a small envelope. "Excuse me," he said gently. "May I come in?" Lila hesitated. Visitors were rare, and strangers even rarer. Yet something in his eyes told her this wasn't ordinary. "Okay," she said softly, stepping aside. He entered, removing his coat, revealing the tailored suit beneath. His presence was imposing yet cautious, as if he were unsure how to interact with someone like her. I didn't expect this," he admitted, scanning the modest room. "It's smaller than I imagined." Lila smiled faintly, embarrassed. "It's all I have." He handed her the envelope. "I want you to read this, carefully." Inside was a letter, written in precise handwriting. It addressed her by name and thanked her for her act of kindness the previous evening. But more than that, it contained an offer, one that made her heart race. "I don't understand," she whispered. He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You saved me last night, without knowing who I am. That takes courage and compassion. I would like to repay you, not with money, but with an opportunity." Lila felt her stomach tighten. She had survived on meager wages and small jobs her whole life. Opportunities were almost mythical in her world. What kind of opportunity? The man, whose name she now learned was Julian Cross, a powerful CEO and philanthropist, looked at her seriously. "A position in my foundation. You have empathy, you have heart. You understand people. I believe you could help us make a real difference." Lila shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. "Me? I'm just a girl who cleans tables. I don't know anything about foundations or charity." Julian smiled warmly. "You know more than you realize. Heart, courage, and compassion are what this world needs most. Knowledge can be taught." For the first time, Lila felt hope that didn't feel like a dream. A single act, a small, selfless act of giving her coat, had reached far beyond what she had imagined. That evening, after she had processed the impossibility of it, Lila sat down to her journal. She wrote about the rain, about Julian, and about the strange twist of fate that had entered her life. And she wrote a promise to never forget that kindness mattered, and that even the smallest gesture could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Little did she know, her act of kindness had already set into motion an unbelievable revelation. A truth that would not only change her life, but uncover secrets about Julian's family, his company, and the world she had only just begun to glimpse. The following morning, Lila arrived at Julian Cross's foundation headquarters. The building was massive, gleaming glass and steel towering above the city streets. Lila felt a pang of intimidation as she stood before the entrance, clutching her small handbag. Her coat, now dry and neatly buttoned, felt inadequate compared to the elegance around her. Julian met her at the front doors. "Don't be nervous," he said gently, noticing her hesitation. "This place isn't as scary as it looks." Lila forced a smile. "It's impressive." "It should be," Julian replied with a wry smile. "But what matters most is the work, not the building." He led her through the halls, showing her offices bustling with staff, some on the phone, others huddled over documents. "You'll start small," Julian explained. "Observation, learning how we organize aid, how we assess needs, and eventually helping make decisions that impact real lives." Lila's stomach fluttered. She had never imagined she could walk into a place like this, let alone contribute to it. Yet, something in Julian's calm, encouraging demeanor gave her confidence. Her first task was simple: visit a shelter to understand how resources were distributed. Lila observed children playing, mothers trying to stretch meager food supplies, and volunteers attempting to do more with less. She realized how desperately help was needed, how many lives hung by threads. By the end of the day, she was exhausted, but exhilarated. The work was real, tangible, and she could see that her compassion, the very quality that had led Julian to her, was exactly what this place needed. A week into her new role, Lila began noticing odd things about Julian himself. While he spoke warmly with staff and genuinely listened to their concerns, there were moments when his gaze became distant, his fingers drumming lightly against his desk. One afternoon, while assisting him with organizing letters of request from various charities, she noticed a photograph partially hidden under a stack of envelopes. Curiosity got the better of her. She gently lifted it. The image showed a younger Julian with a boy who bore a striking resemblance to him. His hair was slightly darker, his face softer, but the resemblance was undeniable. "Who's this?" Lila asked softly, not realizing Julian was standing behind her. Julian froze for a moment. Then, with a measured breath, he took the photo gently from her hands. "That is my brother." Lila's eyes widened. "Your brother?" Julian nodded. "He passed away several years ago, very suddenly. Before that, he was my only family besides me." His voice was heavy, tinged with sorrow. There are things about him that no one knows, things I've tried to keep private. Lila felt her heart tighten. She had always been honest and forthright with those she trusted, but she realized she had stumbled into a deeply personal part of Julian's life. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't," Julian interrupted, his voice calm. "It's complicated, but there's a reason I wanted to bring you into this foundation, because I believe you have the courage and insight to help me uncover the truth about something I never fully understood." Lila tilted her head. "About your brother?" "Yes," Julian said. "And something else, something I've only recently started to question." Lila listened as He explained that his brother had been involved in charitable work across the city, often anonymously. He had worked with children, families, and those struggling in poverty, but there were hints that some of the funds he used came from mysterious sources, funds that had never been accounted for fully. Julian suspected there might be a hidden network of support his brother had established before he died, a network that could change countless lives if properly uncovered. "And you want me to help?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do," Julian said firmly. "You understand the people we serve in a way most people never could. And your instinct to help without hesitation, that instinct might be exactly what we need to follow the trail." Lila nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. She had never imagined that one small act of kindness, giving a stranger her coat in the rain, would lead her into this world. And yet here she was, holding a key to a secret that could change lives, including her own. The following days were a whirlwind. Lila learned how to analyze donation records, visit hidden community centers, and interview people who had received help from Julian's brother. Each discovery revealed another layer of the mystery: anonymous donations, safe houses for children, educational scholarships, and families quietly supported for years without their knowledge of who had helped them. She discovered that many people had been directly impacted by the brothers' generosity, often in ways they never understood. One woman, for instance, had received a scholarship that allowed her to finish medical school. Another family had been provided a small apartment when they had nowhere to go, giving them stability long enough to rebuild their lives. Lila's heart ached at the realization of how much unseen suffering existed, but it also soared at the thought that a single person's compassion could ripple out to save lives. One evening, as Lila returned to the office late, Julian met her in the hallway. "I wanted to show you something," he said. He led her into a small storage room lined with boxes and envelopes. "Everything here belonged to my brother. Letters, documents, notes. Some of it we didn't even know existed." Lila's eyes widened. She could hardly imagine the decades of work, the sheer generosity, the secret lives lived to help others. Julian turned to her. "I believe you're ready for the next step. To not just uncover the past, but to continue it. To make sure the work he began is carried forward." Lila swallowed, overwhelmed. She thought of her life before, of hunger and cold nights, of struggle. And she realized that her one act of kindness, the coat, the instinct to help a stranger, had brought her to this moment. "Yes," she said softly finally, "I want to help." The following morning, Lila returned to the foundation early, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She had spent the previous evening going through boxes of letters, photographs, and journals left behind by Julian's late brother. Each document revealed stories of courage, selflessness, and sacrifice, but also hinted at something deeper. A network of people and families his brother had quietly supported, some of whom were still in need. Julian greeted her in the office, noticing the determination in her eyes. "I see you've been busy," he said, smiling faintly. "You have a way of focusing on what matters most." Lila nodded. "I want to understand everything. Every letter, every note, every story. I feel like there's more than just the charity work, something else hidden beneath it." Julian's expression darkened slightly, a shadow passing across his features. "You're right. There is something else. My brother. He was protecting people, not just providing them, but shielding them from danger. Some of it I only discovered after he passed." Lila's curiosity spiked. "Danger?" she asked, leaning forward. "What kind of danger?" He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. There were individuals in the city, criminals, corrupt officials, who would have harmed those he helped if he hadn't intervened. He used his resources and connections quietly, sometimes at great personal risk. And there's one case I never fully understood, involving a young girl who disappeared briefly. The records are incomplete, but the people involved were dangerous. Lila's heart raced. "Do you think someone's still in danger?" Julian hesitated. "I don't know, but I think it's possible, and I need someone I can trust to help me uncover the full story and protect anyone still at risk." Lila swallowed hard, suddenly aware that the work ahead wasn't just about charity. It was about uncovering secrets, protecting lives, and possibly confronting people with power who would stop at nothing to keep those secrets buried. "Then I'll help," she said firmly, "whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, Lila and Julian worked tirelessly. They pored over records, traced donations, and interviewed families and individuals who had been helped by Julian's brother. Many were unaware of the source of their support, but all spoke of mysterious acts of generosity that had changed their lives. One afternoon, Lila visited a small library in a quiet neighborhood, following a lead from a journal entry. There, she met an elderly woman named Margaret, who had received assistance with medical bills years ago. As they spoke, Margaret hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "There's more," she whispered. "Someone was protecting my granddaughter after her parents disappeared. We never knew who it was. He helped us, quietly, safely." Lila's heart pounded. "Do you remember any details? Names? Locations?" Margaret shook her head. "Just that he wore a dark coat and always arrived when we least expected him. He risked a lot to keep her safe." Returning to Julian with this information, Lila felt both excitement and apprehension. "This could be the case you mentioned, the girl who disappeared," she said. "We might finally find out what happened." Julian nodded gravely. "And it could reveal more than we imagine. My brother's life was full of hidden risks. If we uncover the truth, it could change everything, not just for us, but for the people he protected." That evening, Julian and Lila sifted through the documents late into the night. Patterns began to emerge. Addresses, names, dates that connected the families and individuals his brother had assisted. But there was one name that kept appearing. One that both terrified and fascinated. Lila. Sophie Lancaster. Sophie had been a child when Julian's brother had helped her family after a series of threats forced them to flee their home. The document suggested that she had disappeared for several months, only to reappear later with her life completely changed, but no one knew how or why. Lila looked at Julian. "We need to find her," she said, her voice trembling. "I think she holds the key to everything your brother was protecting." Julian nodded. "Agreed. But we have to be careful. If there are still people who don't want this revealed, they might try to stop us." The next morning, they began the search. Lila contacted old addresses, spoke to neighbors, and traced financial records. Each clue brought them closer, but also revealed the dangers surrounding the people Julian's brother had protected. Finally, after days of searching, they found a lead. Sophie had been living under a different name in a neighboring city, working quietly at a small community center, helping other children. Lila and Julian arranged a discreet visit. When Sophie opened the door, she froze, staring at them. There was recognition in her eyes, fear, relief, and something else. Something Lila couldn't quite place. I know who you are," Sophie whispered. You're connected to him." Julian stepped forward cautiously. "Yes, He was my brother, and we're here to help if we can." Sophie's expression softened. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped aside, letting them in. "You don't know what he did for me, how he saved my life. He risked everything. And now, you're here?" Lila reached out gently. "Your story matters. We want to make sure it's not lost, and that you're safe." As Sophie began to recount the events she had hidden for so long, the threats, the protection, and the sacrifices made on her behalf, Lila felt a sense of awe. One man's selfless acts had quietly shaped the lives of dozens of people, including herself. And now, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. By the end of the day, Julian and Lila had pieced together the incredible truth. Julian's brother had not only provided charity and protection, but he had also quietly eliminated threats and connected a hidden network of support that ensured the safety of countless vulnerable people. Sophie's story revealed the extent of his bravery, and Lila realized that her small act of kindness, the coat in the rain, had brought her into a circle of people whose lives had been transformed by quiet heroism. And yet, the most unbelievable revelation was still to come, one that would connect Lila personally to Julian's brother and prove that her act of kindness had changed not only her life, but the course of history for the people he protected. The city streets were quiet that evening, but an unease hung in the air. Lila and Julian had returned from Sophie's apartment with heavy hearts and racing minds. Every story, every piece, evidence they uncovered, had revealed how dangerous some of Julian's brother's enemies had been, and some still were. Julian's brow was furrowed as he stared at the documents sprawled across his office desk. "There are still people who don't want this uncovered," he said, his voice tight. "People who were involved in the threats against Sophie and her family. They could come after us next." Lila's hands shook slightly. "We knew the risk, but we can't stop now. We've come too far." Julian nodded. "I know, but we have to be careful. One wrong move, and—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of it hung in the room. For the first time since her life had changed, Lila felt fear, not the fear of hunger or cold, but a deep, sharp fear of real danger, yet it was tempered by determination. She had been given a chance to honor someone's bravery, to continue a legacy of protection and compassion. She wouldn't back down now. The next day, they continued their investigation. Using financial records, old letters and contacts Sophie had trusted, they traced the hidden networks that Julian's brother had created. It was astonishing, the scale of his quiet heroism. Entire families had been kept safe, children had been given education and security, and lives had been rebuilt without anyone ever knowing who was behind it. Then Lila discovered something that made her gasp. Buried among the files was a folder labeled with her own name. Her heart pounded as she opened it, revealing letters and photographs she had never seen before. She looked up at Julian. These are about me." Julian's expression was solemn. "Yes. I didn't know either, until now. My brother, he helped you as well." Lila's mind raced. "But how? I've never met him. I didn't know him." Julian shook his head. He never wanted recognition. But when he learned about your family, about your situation, he made sure you received small acts of support. Food, shelter, opportunities, all quietly, without your knowledge. He wanted to protect you, just as he did so many others. Tears filled Lila's eyes. "All this time, and I never knew." Julian placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've always been kind, Lila. That coat last week, it was instinct. But the truth is, he saw that same instinct in you before. He believed in you, even when you didn't know it." Lila sank into her chair, overwhelmed by emotion. Her life had been so difficult, so lonely, and yet, her small acts of kindness had been noticed, guided, and quietly protected by someone she had never met. But the revelation wasn't finished. As they dug deeper, Julian found correspondence between his brother and an old associate. The letters revealed that Lila's late mother had been a close friend of Julian's brother, and that the young girl had been unknowingly protected and supported. From the very beginning, you're connected, Julian said softly, handing Lila one of the letters. She read it carefully. Her mother had been ill, struggling to make ends meet, and the letters described how Julian's brother had ensured small payments, secret deliveries of food, and safe accommodations for her family, all without their knowledge. Lila's breath caught. All this, it was for me, my family. Julian nodded. Yes. He believed in you, even before you were old enough to realize it. He ensured you had every chance to survive, to thrive, and now, his work continues through you. For the first time, Lila understood the magnitude of her journey. A single act of kindness, offering her coat to Julian, had brought her full circle. The man she had helped was now guiding her to uncover the truth about the person who had been protecting her all along, a man whose life had been dedicated to saving others quietly, selflessly, and with immense courage. As Lila processed the revelation, Julian received a call. A threat had been made, a warning to stop their investigation or face consequences. The danger was real. Lila's pulse quickened. We can't let fear stop us, she said firmly. We have to finish what he started, for everyone he protected, and for me. Julian nodded, agreed, but we must be smart. We move carefully, protect Sophie, protect you, and reveal the truth in a way that ensures safety. Together they devised a plan. With the help of Sophie and a few trusted allies, they began contacting the families, confirming their stories and connecting them to support networks Julian's brother had left in place. Slowly the threads of the past began to form a clear picture. And then came the final, most unbelievable revelation. Among the letters was a personal note addressed to Lila herself. In it, Julian's brother explained that he had recognized her innate kindness long before she even knew him. He had seen the way she treated others, the way she cared for those in need, and had chosen to support her as a way of investing in the future, to ensure that someone with a heart like hers would survive and flourish, no matter the circumstances. Lila held the letter tightly, her eyes filled with tears, a mixture of awe and gratitude. He believed in me, all along. Julian placed a hand gently over hers. And now, you can honor him by continuing his work, by showing the same kindness, courage, and compassion he did. You are the living legacy of everything he stood for Lila. The journey that had begun with a single act of kindness, offering a coat to a stranger in the rain, had led to an unbelievable discovery that she had been loved, protected, and seen by someone who understood the power of compassion better than anyone else in the world. And now, she had the chance to make that legacy her own. The morning sun streamed through the foundation's large glass windows, casting warm light across the office. Lila sat at her desk, reviewing the final reports on the families and children Julian's brother had quietly protected. It was almost surreal to see the full impact of one person's quiet acts of bravery. Lives transformed, futures safeguarded, and hope restored to those who had none. Julian entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You've been at this for hours, he said, handing one to her. I think it's time to take a moment and see the results of what we've uncovered. Lila took the coffee with a tired smile. It's hard to believe all of this, that one person could make such a difference without anyone knowing. That's the beauty of it, Julian replied. It wasn't about recognition. It was about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. Lila nodded. And now, it feels like it's our responsibility to continue that work, to make none of it is forgotten. Over the next few weeks, Lila fully embraced her role at the foundation. With Julian's guidance, she began coordinating support for the families they had located, ensuring that each child, each parent, each vulnerable individual received the help they needed. Sophie had returned to the city as well, working alongside Lila to rebuild the community center that had been her safe haven. The two women became inseparable, bound by gratitude, shared experiences, and a deep understanding of what it meant to survive against the odds. Lila's life, once filled with uncertainty and fear, had transformed. She no longer worried about money or shelter. Instead, she focused on helping others, inspired by the knowledge that one person's kindness, even in the smallest gesture, could ripple outward in unimaginable ways. One afternoon, Julian called Lila into his office. "I want you to see something," he said, handing her a folder. Inside were photographs and letters from all the families his brother had helped over the years. Each picture captured smiles, celebrations, and moments of triumph that had been possible only because of his secret acts of compassion. "Look at all of this," Julian said softly. "All of these lives, because of him. And now, because of you, the work continues." Lila's eyes filled with tears as she scanned the images. Children who had once been frightened and hungry were now thriving. Families who had faced despair were now stable and happy. And at the center of it all, she realized, was the simple truth: one act of kindness could change everything. That evening, Lila walked home through the streets she once feared. The rain had returned, but now it felt cleansing rather than cold. She thought back to that night when she had given her coat to a stranger, not knowing he was a powerful CEO, not knowing that her small gesture would set in motion events that would alter her life forever. She smiled, realizing that her kindness had not only touched Julian, but had also connected her to a network of generosity, courage, and love that spanned years. Her life was no longer defined by struggle alone. It was now intertwined with a legacy of compassion and protection. Back at the foundation, Julian watched Lila from his office window as she spoke with families, offering advice, encouragement, and guidance. He felt a deep sense of pride, not just in the work being done, but in the woman who had entered his life with nothing but heart, and had emerged as a force capable of continuing a secret legacy of incredible impact. He approached her quietly. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he said. "You've not only helped these people, but you've also honored him, my brother, in the best way possible." Lila smiled, her eyes shining. "I never imagined this, that a simple act, giving a coat to a stranger, could lead to something so big. I wanted to help, and you did," Julian replied. "And now, countless others will benefit because of it." As weeks turned into months, Lila's life became a testament to the power of kindness. She continued her work at the foundation, expanding programs, connecting with families, and ensuring that the hidden legacies of bravery and compassion were never forgotten. Sophie became her partner in this mission, and together they nurtured a community built on trust, hope, and love. And through it all, Lila never forgot the lesson she had learned that rainy night, that even in poverty, even in fear, even in a world that often seems cold, one small act of kindness could set off a chain of events, leading to the most unbelievable discoveries and the most extraordinary changes. Her life had been transformed, not by money or privilege, but by the courage to care. And in that, she realized something profound. The world could be reshaped by the choices of one person, guided by compassion, and strengthened by the courage to act. As Lila walked through the foundation's halls one evening, watching children laugh and families find support, she felt a sense of completeness she had never known. Her journey had begun with nothing but heart, and it had led her to something greater than she could have imagined. A life filled with purpose, connection, and the knowledge that her small act of kindness had truly changed the world. And somewhere in the quiet moments, she felt her late mother smiling down on her, proud that her daughter had lived with courage, heart, and a kindness capable of changing lives.